Welcome of the Business Blind Spots Exposed podcast. So let me tell you real quick, and just maybe a couple of lines, what BBSE, as I call it, is all about. For me personally, my personal and professional journey, I found that the stuff that I don't know that I don't know is the stuff that can hurt me most. I think in terms of the car in the lane next to you. If you don't see them in your mirrors or you don't see them in your periphery, you move into the right lane, and all of a sudden you've got a multi-$1,000 damage that's just occurred. If only you'd known it there. So if you translate that analogy into business, all the stuff you don't know that you don't know is the stuff that'll hurt. That your companies, I mean, that your, excuse me, your employees, that your customers, that your profitability is not where you want it to be and what got it there. Now, I started a company around blind spots because looking at the data can tell you where the inconsistencies lie, where you can start scratching your head saying, what's wrong there? But if you don't know the story behind what those blind spots are, sometimes you can have all the data in the world, but it just won't help you figure it out. And that's what the BBSE is all about. Bringing the experts on, the people who have been there, done that, experienced and cried those tears, telling you, well, so this is what I saw, what I experienced, or what I see all the time in the people that I work with. So today we've got Yinka. Yinka, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, Vinay. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good. And I've been really waiting and excited to get to this because I think I love the topic that you have and kind of just all the conversations that I've had with you in the past and what I've heard of you in the past. I've always gotten a lot out of it. So Yinka, just before we get started, I want to tell people what's coming up in the next couple of weeks here. And I also want to tell them a little bit about why I invited you on so they understand a little bit about why I'm so impressed with you. So let me tell you about what's coming up in the next couple of weeks here. So on April 27th, I've got Adam Holt. Since we do focus a lot on the pest control industry, Adam Holt is going to come out and talk about the numbers behind the insects. Well, there's a lot of technical knowledge and functional knowledge there, and he's going to dive into all of it because understanding the numbers behind it is going to help you tune a better culture. Wendy Clark is coming in on April 22nd. She's going to talk about the strategic battle plan, defeat the tyrant called urgent. So many companies are constantly responding, just reacting. But is it really important? And that's what she's going to talk to us about. How do you start to separate the wheat from the chaff? Because you start to operate from important, stuff gets done really well. On April 20th, I've got David Dickey, who's going to talk about how to recruit right by the numbers. You don't want to wait till people come in the door to filter them out. You want to filter them before they come in the door, because it's not because you got 250 candidates that you find the right person. It's because you found the right person that you find the right person. So those are 3 upcoming podcasts in the next 2 weeks. But today I've got Yinka, who's going to talk about the top behaviors of successful women business leaders. So Yinka, I'm going to try to embarrass you here for the next couple of seconds as I talk about some of your credentials and what I love so much about you. Yinka, so you've got a company named Kala Success Systems Unlimited, women's business champion, coach, consultant, and I love this idea, systems savant. I think you kind of, just based on what I've heard coming out of you before, just understanding how to systematize and how to think of things in terms of a process. And I like this tagline, making success inevitable for women in business. Your mission is to elevate the experience for women, building and helping leaders understand that building a successful business doesn't result in sacrifice and suffering for the other parts of your life. You can kind of have your cake and eat it too, is basically what I'm getting out of that. And I love that. The aim is to show that just because you're different, it's not a weakness. It's actually a superpower. That is what is uniquely you. And specifically in supporting women, helping them do what they think is sometimes maybe impossible, so that they don't have to choose between the parts of their lives. They can actually redefine what having it all means. Gosh, there's so much to unpack there. First of all, thanks for being on. Did I get that all right?
Yeah, you did. Thank you so much for having me. I am equally so excited to be here. And just really, yes, you got it all right. And there's so much, so I will let you ask away. But really excited to be with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, first of all, I see Audrey and Sunny have both joined us. Good evening, good morning. Thank you all for joining us. I appreciate you joining into the conversation. Please make this interactive. If you hear something that I say that doesn't make any sense at all, call me out on it. By the same token, I would love for you to chime in when you hear something from Yinka. She drops lots of great nuggets out there, and tell me that that was a nugget that was of value. So, um, Yinka, the first thing I want to talk about this difference. People being different is not a weakness; it's a superpower. I feel like I have leaned so much into understanding that. My dad was an operator, an operations guy. He used to run as the general manager of a company, had 450, 500 people working for him, and I was always the dreamer. And gosh, it was triangle, square peg, round hole kind of thing.
Mhm.
He was in operations, 1, 2, 3, rinse, repeat kind of thing. And I'm always off in the clouds. Talk to me about that difference and that uniqueness and being a superpower, not a weakness.
Well, I will first of all say that the fact is that we're all made unique.
Mhm.
There aren't two people on this planet with the same fingerprint, with the same, anything. We're all made unique. And because I believe that that is for a purpose, all of a sudden, um, it begs the question, okay, so why were we all made so differently? If we were supposed to be the same, do the same, act the same, know the same, then surely, given when you look at nature and you look at the beauty and structure and order and system that nature has, if we were all supposed to be the same, then that's how we would have been designed. So given that we were all designed so differently, that must be for a purpose. So I absolutely believe that we were designed differently for a purpose. We're all given a really unique perspective on the world. We're given an invisible version of the planet in our minds. And I wholeheartedly believe that our purpose here is to make that invisible version visible to everyone else. So that's your mission, to express what it is that you've been given in terms of that kind of better feature or better version of why we're here. But the problem is that we're also, in addition to being different and unique, we're also very tribal, and we need groups and we need that security in numbers. So all of a sudden, and it's difficult to deal with difference. Same is easier to manage. And so that is where, society likes homogeny, and they like, taking off all the edge and making everything the same. But different absolutely is our superpowers, because it's the reason, it feeds into our purpose. It's the reason why we're here. And it gives us a real opportunity to play to our strengths, but also create things that are inherently protected and inherently valuable, because they aren't replicable by anyone else. The more you as a business person lean into your story, the more you lean into your strengths and superpowers, the more difficult it is to, for your things to be stolen or for your ideas to be replicated elsewhere. So yeah, different. And don't get me wrong, different is hard, and part of that whole kind of tribal instinct is, the people who love you most are those who often, see where you have these excesses at a very early age. So, one of my superpowers is asking questions. But I was that kid who was like, why? My poor mum and dad, my poor mum and dad just, they were exasperated by my questions by, 8 o'clock in the morning. And so they, the people who love you see those excesses. Your superpowers are often innate, and they present early. And they are the thing I often say to people, they're the things that you would have gotten told off for when you were little. So, you talk about being a dreamer, in the house of an operator, dreaming is dangerous. How are you going to put food on the table? I'm always asking questions. Curiosity killed the cat. But these are the things, it's my curiosity that has been a strength in so many places. And so, yeah, different absolutely is a superpower. And it's probably what got you in trouble when you were little.
I feel like we live parallel lives growing up. Yes, 10,000 questions, everything. Why? And to the point of exhaustion of others, which is funny because I have told my kids, 11, 10, and 8, I said the most powerful word in any language is the word why. Much to my chagrin, sometimes when they ask 15 times why, right? It's like it's time to go to sleep. just go to sleep. But Audrey just chimed in and said, "Definitely, Yinka. I'm embracing being different, but it's like swimming against the tide." And Audrey, I'm gonna suggest maybe a slight change in the verbiage here. Um, for me, leaning into being a visionary, I was very scared of talking about that for a long time. Instead of swimming against the tide, it's actually making my own gravity instead. So it's not that I'm trying to define myself by someone else's measuring stick, which is what most people try to do, is define their own self-worth by someone else. It's actually building my own measuring stick, so I'm no longer swimming against the tide. It is my tide. Yinka, what do you think of
Absolutely.
that?
Absolutely. And it's one of the shifts, one of the blind spots that we have is this need for external validation, is the need for other people to say, oh, good job, before we believe we did a good job. And it's what social media is built on. You put out a post and then you're like, please like it, please comment, please, everything about that environment is designed for that external validation. And as a result of it, it creates echo chambers. Instead of posting what you think, you post what you think people want to read. And that's actually a completely different way to do things. And so I completely agree with you. It's when we move away from the idea of swimming, well, not definitely swim, but the idea of swimming against the tide, to actually just finding and swimming in your own lane. The idea of swimming against the tide, and I totally feel it, and I understand you so poignantly, Audrey, speaks to the idea of resistance. It's hard, it's difficult, and it also speaks to this comparison of swimming with the tide. So the people who will seem to fit in seem to have it easier than you, whereas I view it kind of differently, and I would say that because I'm swimming in my own lane, the tide is the tide. If it feels difficult, then maybe it's meant to be. And rather than feeling like it's against the tide, I just tell myself that's the tide it is. And by doing that, all of a sudden, it's in, as I explain to my children, if you say something is hard, it will feel hard, even if hard is the normal. And so yeah, I basically create my own pool and swim in my own lane and do my own thing, because I'm no longer seeking that external validation. I can't be anyone else. Believe me, if I could have been, I would have done so by now. There's enough messages out there for women, for people of color, to tell you that you should be different from how you are. And there's enough products that, skin lightening, hair straightening, there's enough ways to make you like others. It's not me. The one of our most important superpowers is that authenticity. So yeah, the tide is the tide. My journey is my journey, and the less I compare it to others, and that's one of the things that I feel really strongly about, because there is this narrative of disadvantage. Oh, women have it harder than men. Yes, if you assume that they're running the same race, they really aren't. Our roads are so different. Our race is our race, their race is their race. They and yes, that they may have the pick and the glut of the resources, but actually the other part of the success equation is resourcefulness. And when that comes to determination, grit, networking, collaboration, innovation, all of those other things that come out of resourcefulness, I dare you to try and out resourcefulness a woman. Yeah, there's no disadvantage there for me. So
Gosh, so many things to unpack just in what you said there. I'm not even sure where to start. Well, couple of things. First of all, Audrey, thank you so much for chiming in. What a fantastic comment, and I appreciate you doing that. It is a great topic. I have a number of women that I know who have told me, it's not fair, right? There's adverse circumstances, and my response to them has been, and I said, look, I am speaking from a place of being a man, but I will also tell you, you might be using the wrong measuring stick because you don't want to be me. That's not the right definition of you. So the word equal works nicely in 1 + 1 = 1 mathematical equations, but unfortunately, you're one person, but not one like me, right? Ones are different, right?
And that's the thing, the whole reason why I do what I do is because we use the same words and they mean completely different things. So success, you ask any person on the planet what success means, you should, if they're being true to themselves, get 7 billion different definitions.
That's right.
Success for a newborn baby is to be fed, have a clean bottom, and go to sleep.
Yeah.
For an old person, it might be something quite similar.
Or
But
the same.
but the point is that we have allowed other people to determine such important parts of our lives for us. We've bought into their narrative of success. We've bought into their narrative of journey. We've bought into their narrative of milestone. And then, then we're worried and concerned that we can't meet up to those standards. Those standards are not made for us. Those milestones, I'm a woman, I have 3 children. How I spend my day is infinitely different to a woman with no children, to a man with 3 children, to a man with no children. And so because the factors are all infinitely different, the journey is just different. And I spent a long time, raging against the machine and wanting to stick it to the man. And then I was like, actually, yeah, I mean, I'm not one to say that structures of, oppression or inequity shouldn't be dismantled. I'm right at the front of that, of dismantling it with my bare hands where I can. But at the same time, just completely changing that narrative. There is nothing that will stop me getting the things that I want out of the one wild and precious life I've been given, except my own, the limits I put on myself, and where I allow my self-doubt to get the best of me. And so that they are literally the things that I invest in, focusing on my my self-belief, centering my self-awareness. That is the number one place. That is the best investment for any entrepreneur, any person who wants any success in life. Self-awareness is your number one. It's the place where the blind spots literally multiply if you don't have that in check. So yeah, that's where I spend my time focusing in on. It's not, it's why I help women. I created a product specifically to support self-awareness, because self-awareness builds self-worth. Self-worth, shapes your worldview shapes your belief shapes your habits and behaviors. The habits and behaviors give you actions. Like, there are 1,000,001 coaches who will tell you the right things to do, but if you don't go down the chain and sort out that self-worth and self-belief, it will be counterproductive.
Yes. Wow. Again, so much to unpack there. A couple of things that I'm hearing, and you've used the word blind spots a number of times, and I want to distill what I'll call the first blind spot in a lot of what I've heard here. And that is not needing external validation. And that's so easily said and so difficultly done. Because the measuring stick is always, this is what the market says you should be, but you're over here. And there's not always a one-to-one correlation between the two. As a company, we built a culture intelligence tool that tells you what your culture is, what the data is. And what we express to companies is, hey, I will help you understand what the behaviors your employees are and who is doing what. And every single employee is going to be different. That's it. Everyone is going to be different. And if you try to get them to all fit the same exact mold, well, you're going to have a tough time, and some people are going to stay and some people are going to leave. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about here, is this idea of understanding not only about yourself, but as a leader, right, for a company or with employees or people partners, whatever the case may be, is if you start to give yourself that grace, that space to understand what you're coming from and also understand that others have their own place. Gosh, if you give people that space and they have that room to operate and you give them that protected environment, gosh, they can fully step into their own superhero, and they can take off the white shirt and the superhero costume below shines through, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think that it's so important, as a leader, your job is, I was saying this to someone the other day, as a person in the business, your output is output. But as a leader, your output is people. It's how do they thrive? It's how do they grow? It's how do they become a better version of themselves. And I love the quote which says leaders create leaders, they don't create fellow or other followers. And I think again, it comes back to that self-awareness, and that not obsessing and chasing external validation. It's always a real telltale sign in the culture if everybody, all the rest of the people are the yes men or the yes women of the leader. If you can't have that environment where you have challenge, then that's a huge red flag. So I do think it's really important that in terms of leadership, as I said, it really does come back to self-awareness is always top of my list. Emotional management is second. So, being able to know what to do with your emotions and act in the best interest of the team and the goal and the purpose. That's some adult stuff right there. Not everyone, it's a work in progress at all times, but that's where leadership becomes that, and that's why servant leadership is so powerful. But that's where it comes from, when it's not just about me, or it's not all about me because I'm the one at the top.
So, Sunny, thank you for your comment as well about agreeing with the idea of power. The power of why is so crucial in life in general. It brings complications and hardship, but so much glory and struggle. The story that I tell my kids is, I'm going to invite you, and this is what I say as the leader, as their father in this case, said, I'm going to invite you to go on a hike with me. And we may have to hike for an hour and a half to get to the top of that mountain. Now, you can complain the whole hike to the top of that mountain because it's a beautiful vista at the top. And I think you'll see that. Or you can have a conversation with me. We can sing songs, have fun, do things together on that journey to the top of the mountain. Now, I'll guarantee you one thing, whether you're upset with the process or you enjoy the process, it's the same amount of work. The work is the same. It just is, right? It's just a matter of whether you see that as work or you see it as enjoyment. That's the journey to where you want to go. And I think that's part of what I'm hearing here, right? As a leader, you're trying to say to them, hey, look, I'm going to give you the option. You can choose how you want to see it, but I'm going to invite you to this beautiful vista over here. You want to join me?
Yeah.
How does that sit with you?
Absolutely. And I think, it's the difference, for example, between a cost and an investment. When we're thinking about, marketing or sales or, anything in life, you're going to give over, some form of value in exchange for another form of value. So is it a cost? And the parts of the brain that lights up when you see prices. A friend of mine is a behavioral psychologist, and she runs a marketing automation company. She's amazing, but she talks about the fact that the part of your brain that lights up when it sees the cost of something is the same part that actually registers physical pain. And so exactly. So nothing has meaning except the meaning you give it. So is this a cost? Pain lights up, or is this an investment? Completely different part of your brain lights up, overrides, calms it down. And I feel really strongly about that power that you have. And the only way you can really use that power starts with self-awareness and then moves into emotional management. Because ultimately, two people can be in exactly the same pace, experiencing exactly the same thing, and be in a completely different state. You see people on islands, and the people who are starting their holiday are relaxed and happy, and the people who are ending their holiday are miserable because they're mentally already back at home. And so it really is about you giving things meaning, and again, as a leader, you facilitating and inviting your team and those that you lead to do the same, to share your vision of things. But you're right, it's the same number of steps to the top. So we can moan or we can smile, but keep it moving.
The step is still going to occur either way, right?
Absolutely.
So I heard blind spot number 2. The output of a leader is not anything other than just other leaders. Is that blind spot there? But I want to shift the conversation to this difficulty part, right? Swimming. I mean, as Audrey put it a little earlier, swimming against the tide. I think it's very easy for people to quickly, and Audrey, I'm by no means trying to pick on you here when I'm saying this, but I think there's so many people. I know I did this for a very long time. All this stuff is woo-woo, fluffy stuff. It doesn't matter. How do you reconcile with it? First of all, I think someone's got to be ready to see it, right? But that journey of 1,000 steps starts with the first one. When people say, "I don't care about this stuff. I got 10 fires I've got to go fight right now. I don't have time to talk about all this woo-woo stuff." How do you respond to that? Where you can say, "Let me invite you into this first door." What does that look like?
I mean, what I would say is I'm not. I know it sounds like quite a harsh thing to say. I'm not in the convincing business. Yeah. So I don't. They say you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Yep. I may not even bring that horse to the water. I just think that I believe really strongly in resonance. So I believe that that there is a real opportunity. There are people out there that need what you have, and that's always the case. Your job is to find them. And now, don't get me wrong, there are people who don't care about what you have and you can convince them. But to be honest, there are people who desperately need what you have and will take it out of your hands quick, smart. And so I would rather be of value to those people. I will always, people who are vaguely interested, work, nurture all of those kinds of things. But I think it's really important to treat adults like adults. And as someone who is familiar, with neuromarketing and neurocoaching, or I of course I can, use the force for bad if I wanted to, but I think it's important. I would never want anyone to override my beliefs, my what I think. I believe wholeheartedly that every adult human of sentient mind actually absolutely has the right to live their choices, and so. But they also have, therefore, the responsibility to live their consequences. Yeah. And so for me, all I can do is invite. For those that resonate, they'll come, amazing. Those who are like, "I don't care about this, I've got 10 fires to fight," I will point out that the reason you have 10 fires to fight is because you're not focusing on this. But, go ahead. At the end of the day, you're an adult. It would be arrogant of me to assume that what I know is better than what you know, or I have solutions for your life that you don't have yourself. Whether or not that may or may not be true. The point is that if I convince you of something, then someone else can unconvince you. Whereas if you convince yourself, our human need for congruence means that it will be very hard for anyone else to take that away from you. And that, again, comes back to that external validation versus internal centering. So my goal is always to go for that, is to to support you to convince yourself. I'm not in the convincing business.
This is interesting. I just had a conversation with some of my marketing team this morning about how we're ramping up some efforts. We've got a product, it's working well. We've had some fantastic wins. And I said, all right, so now it's time to shift from first gear into fifth. I'm ready to make the jump, right? That's a huge, huge leap. I said, here's the trick, is don't think about convincing people to do something, right? Because convincing is a negative energy. You've got to do this. Yinka, you should eat carrot. And the analogy I use is, Yinka, you got to eat carrots for every single meal for the rest of your life. And you're going to say, I don't want to eat carrots for. But if I invite, same exact word that you use, right? But if I invite you to say, look, I'm living a better life because of eating carrots. And you say, well, why? Back to that question, Sunny, Sunny, that you asked. But then all of a sudden you are doing it from a place of why and what you want, and then you can start to follow. So I'm inviting along a path as opposed to selling you something. And I think so many people think being successful is about selling, convincing others. It's not a scalable way to do things. It's not sustainable, and you
It
just
just,
feel like crap afterwards.
but also it's the wrong part of it. Again, it's a really powerful shift. If you shift people from what they've got to do, so obligation, to what they get to do, opportunity. Who doesn't want an opportunity?
Yeah.
So moving away from you've got to do this, to you get to do this. You're one of the lucky ones. You are, being given this incredible opportunity. The energy is different, the desire is different, the commitment is different. So I totally wholeheartedly agree with you on that.
So, Audrey, you have, between some of the great comments that we're getting here and the points that you're making, the ideas are coming up in my head. I'm having a hard time keeping them all together here. So, Audrey says everything has a price. Too many times people want something for nothing. Check mark in that box. I agree. Many do that, and I try my level best not to subscribe to that anymore.
But
There's always
I think it's a child thing. Kids want, everything and want nothing, and that's fine. Wanting something for nothing, I'm not offended by the desire.
It's not wrong.
Yeah, it's not wrong. It's just not going to happen. And so, yeah, and this is where the opportunity lies, because when I realized that I was telling myself a story that wasn't helpful, I had the opportunity to tell myself a different one. And my story now is, it's easy for me to say, oh, life is hard for me and easy for everyone else. But actually, I'm more of the opinion that life is life, and hard is what you tell yourself it is. But more importantly, everything might actually be hard. So just choose your hard. Being overweight is hard. Losing weight is hard. Choose what one you want. Building a business is hard. Being an employee is hard. Like, choose your hard. Choose your hard is something I say to myself all the time when I'm doing my resistance weights work. Like, choose your hard. It's not like one is hard and one is easy. That building, financial prudence is hard, but being broke is hard. And so I just think that once you tell yourself, you're then empowered, but you're also, it's again about this, choice and consequence. Make your choice, take your medicine, live your consequence. And so, like I said, the desire to want to have something for nothing is a human nature thing, and it's as old as the hills, and it's never going to go away. I'm not mad at it, but yeah, that at some point you're going to have to grow up and realize that it doesn't quite work like
that. Yeah, gosh, I feel like there's another analogy to a story just about the way they were acting, and I said, if you truly want that behavior wouldn't exist. So there's something else that's coming up for you then, right? I also agree with you, Audrey, and choose your heart. I think I might have to put that up on my my wall quotes over here. That is so simple and profound, and I love it. Audrey also said, getting clarity on consequences will not stop certain actions, but recognizing benefits of action, especially to others, is key. Yeah, let's unpack that one a little bit, right? If you give people, so I talk about in my company with the data. So many people look at data as cold, hard facts. And I talk about it as a company, we empathize the data because it's all about the narrative behind. The story is more important. You just need to have the text and the words in the right paragraphs, in the right space, or else the story makes no sense. The text in a book is the data, but the story does not exist without it. So this idea of empathy and being, as a leader, being able to understand the narrative for others and how you can serve them best in their reaching their own why, their own validation for themselves. I mean, that's unlocking their superpower as much as it is yours, because now you've just amplified yourself. Because they want to do something, you don't have to ask them because it's about their why. Am I getting that right?
Absolutely. I think recognizing that everyone is in it for themselves is the best way to pretty much lead anything. Because ultimately, if I and you know, when I have conversations and think about, you know, joining teams or, you know, understanding people's desires, understanding what makes them tick, understanding what is a win for them is the fastest and easiest way to get a win for us all. I don't expect anybody to do for me, you know, because they like my face, except my husband. But you know, outside of that, you know, rational self-interest is actually very powerful. You know, it's the way that we operate. So recognizing that and not, you know, not being mortified when, you know, they've got their own plan. Everyone has their own plans. No, you know, it's the reason why it's you know, they are being paid to be there. They're not being there only out of the goodness of their hearts. And so I think it is really important that you put front and center. This is a win for the company. This is a win for me as a leader. What is the win for you? What is that win? And this again is how leaders create other leaders, not followers. Because by them being given the opportunity to really focus in on their own win, that, you know, they are leading that mini organization in terms of, you know, that personal brand, that portfolio of skills and talents and experiences that, you know, ultimately, you know, feature on their CV. They are the leader of that. And so in empowering them to be able to step up and say, this is what is true for me, I think is a really empowering an important way to support people, to lead them, to have that self-leadership.
So I did a math exercise with my kids. Gosh, my poor kids keep getting all of this stuff. We did a math exercise where we started talking to them about powers, so rate exponents. And I told them that if I took, you know, 1 to the power of different exponents, how it does, how it goes. And I started to show them, if you get 8 to the power of 4, you know, 8 times 8 times 8 times 8, how massively large that number is compared to 2 to the power of 4, and 8 to the power of 4 is 4,096. All I was simply saying to them is, look, if you look at each one of those layers, is the 4 layers of management, right? So there's myself in this organization. I've got 8 people that report to me, and 8 people that report to them, and 8 people. That's 4,096 people in that organization. So I implemented a program in my company. I call it the Rule of Eights. For every individual, I want you to think in terms of, what 8 people do you need working for you? Right? So it raises their gaze from, I'm a do, to, oh, what do I need to get to a point where I need somebody else who can replace me in this role so I can go think the bigger step. And that, and the specific thing that I do with each one of them is, I said, how does that align with your why, and how does that align with the company why? Because if, going back to that mountain analogy, we're going to get to the top of the mountain. It's just, are we going to enjoy that ride together? And if you want to go and see that beautiful mountain vista, you're going to get there, and you're going to enlist all the support along the way to get to that mountain vista by yourself. How does that resonate with you? How does that sit with you? Does that make some sense?
Absolutely. And it reminds me of the quote, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. It reminds me that actually longevity and legacy is about team. It's about groups. And actually, I don't know how fast you can necessarily go alone, because at some point you're still going to need people. So yeah, it really does resonate. And I think that I love the fact that you're moving them away from this downward gaze of do, and me. And then you're making them lift their head and think we. That is a really powerful shift in terms of self-leadership.
Yeah, and look, if they all get aligned, then I'm not actually asking them to do anything, because I know where they're going. Right? So I'm not pushing. I'm just trying to hang on at that point.
I mean, you know, John Maxwell says, you know, a leader is the one who knows the way, shows the way, goes the way. So that's your only job description. No show, go. Off you go.
Top behaviors of successful women. I've heard no need for external validation, and just as, and if any men listening in, I don't think this is just for women. No need for external validation. Output as a leader is leaders. Choose your hard. I'm going to start to use that from now on. What else? What other things do you see for leaders that they really need to become aware of in terms of shifting their perspective?
Ooh, so I recently did a talk, and it was actually on the 7 shifts that leaders or business owners, and one of them that was probably quite contrarian, but not deliberately. And it's ironic because someone called me an elegant contrarian today. So an organic as well, elegant, organic contrarian. But the shift was to move away from optimism and to instead shift towards realism, but have that realism bathed in possibility. So many business owners, leaders, obviously they have this beautiful vision of the future. But the problem with optimism is exactly that. You underestimate the challenge, you overestimate your impact, and it's the difference between it being vivid and real in your mind and it being vivid and real in real life. And so I know it sounds like the most counterintuitive shift, moving away from. So, for example, I was speaking to business owners and I said to them that in 10 years, 90% of businesses no longer exist. So, in a room of 100 people, 10 years will still be here. So, that's the facts. And there are good reasons for that, retirement, but there's also bad reasons for that. Businesses failing. And so whatever the statistics are on business failure, the fact is that running a business is not, it's not something that you go into. If you think of the analogy, you don't rock up to army training in your flip-flops and your shorts, and you prepare.
Right.
And there's a saying that I love by Robin Sharma. He calls it the Spartan credo, and he says that those who sweat more in training bleed less in war. But a lot of people start businesses not understanding that they're going into war. They're like, oh, like flip-flops and sunglasses, and and then they're like, oh my gosh, this is nothing like what I thought it was going to be like. And this is where I love your emphasis on data, because the data will give you realism. But that it's not being real is not the issue. It's being real tells you where you are. Then when you bathe that realism in possibility, you can go anywhere. But the only reason you can go anywhere is because you're very clear and you're not deluded about where you are right now. And that delusion is a real challenge. And is a real blind spot, because we're supposed to be positive people, and we're supposed to keep the energy high, and but actually more important than high energy is realism.
Got a quote up here. So you choose hard is probably going to go up there, but this one says luck is the residue of design, and I think it's just the same thing, right? If you prepare and you prepare because you know what the measuring stick is, you will get lucky. That's it.
Yeah, no, totally. I think another blind spot, though, and it's one that I've definitely got stories about, is this emphasis shifting away from the emphasis of what you can do and produce, and shifting your mindset towards this sense of leverage. And that's where I'm obsessed with systems. I love systems. I wrote an article a few years back called "Systems Are Sexy and Why Every Business Needs Systems." I genuinely believe, and people hear systems and think tech. Long before tech ever existed in its current format, systems it's about process. It's about a way of thinking, and it's about scale. And so, but we're socialized, especially because many people who start businesses or are leaders, if you're promoted in an organization to be a leader, it's often because you're a star performer, and so you're used to relying on your own activity and your own wits and your own workload and all of those things. but that isn't going to be a measure of your leadership going for, that's not how you're measured as a leader, because your output is people and your output is other leaders. So you have to move away from this idea of what I can do, and you need to move towards a shift of what I can get done. And that's a hard shift. That's a very hard shift.
I had a conversation with my coach this past Friday, and the conversation was, it sounds like splitting hairs sometimes, choosing words, right? But it was the difference between the word effective and efficiency, right? And the idea is that efficiency is doing the same thing over and over and over again with the same result. Effectiveness is doing what you do well, right? And I think that's a little bit of what I'm hearing here, right? So many people are so focused on being efficient all the time. I get $1 and I make it into two. But if your real superpower is making $1 into 5,000, why are you making $2? Right? Right?
And it's that difference.
Yeah, that's right.
I was going to say it's the difference between action and impact. We're obsessed with action when what we should be obsessed with is impact. Yeah. And like you said, if you can make $1 5,000, then making it two is a gross underutilization of your skills and superpowers. What are you doing?
That's right. It's in the World Cup, in the world of soccer or proper football, right? A goalie should not be playing striker, because
they shouldn't.
They should. What a useless use of their talent, right?
No, absolutely.
And if you can start to understand that you don't need that external validation, you get to play as the striker that you're meant to be, or the goalie that you are meant to be, right? So I wrote these last two down. The last one's a shift from optimism to realism. And I think the one that the fifth blind spot that I wrote down here is this idea of use systems to institutionalize realism, right? Take those systems that you build to constantly say, all right, am I real? Am I real? Am I real? And the system itself, the process will tell you if you're being just, hey, head in the clouds, dreamy all the time.
Because you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems, says James Clear, who I am yet again quoting from Atomic Habits. But yeah, it's exactly that. And the thing that the lie we're sold when it comes to business building and leadership, we're sold this massive action lie, and we're sold this, and that's again that external validation. People applaud massive action. It takes 10,000 hours to be an overnight success, or whatever it is that the saying is. But actually, it's the reason why we want that massive action and we want that overnight success is because we want the applause, and that's the bit that we're all obsessed with. But the thing that actually makes the difference is tiny habits and consistency. And that is the least sexy thing on the planet.
So when I've been saying throughout the course of this conversation you and I have been having that there's so much to unpack, I wanted to quote James Clear on this idea of the 1% improvement, right? 1%, 1%, 1%. And I'm going to actually put that as sort of my sixth blind spot here that I'm hearing from you, right? That 1% improvement every day is the applause you should give yourself every day, right?
Every day. Like
every day, 1%, 1%. And after some time, it's 1,000% and you didn't even notice it.
1% every day is 37 times more at the end of the year. But the thing is that, it's 1% at the end of the day is 1%. 1% at the end of each day for a week is only still 7%. And so, because we're designed and we've been trained into that external validation, no one's going to clap for you at 7%. No one's going to clap about that. So you're like, let me take this giant leap. Let me show that I'm being serious. If you want to show you're being serious, find the tiny action that sits in that, the 20% of stuff that gives you 80% of your results. Do that consistently and just watch all the things. And this is how, you spoke about it at the beginning. That's how success becomes inevitable, because you're focused on what actually makes a difference. And you're focused on, and this is where all of those shifts come together. And this is where, again, it all kind of comes back down to that self-awareness and it being just so pivotal to everything else. Because if you don't know where you are, you don't know how to lean into making use of your strengths for your business or your leadership. So you don't know how to make the highest impact or the highest income. So you faff around and you waste your time, and then you're busy and shattered, but you're not making any progress. And so they all fit together, and you know, it does genuinely linchpin on that self-awareness piece.
So I told you last Friday I talked to my coach. Also last week I reached out to a number of other of my mentors, or people, you know, people that I consider friends, or people that there's so many people that I learn from every day. But four of them specifically that I reached out to, one of the things that came up, which I think is maybe put a nice little bow on all of what we're saying here, is I asked them all, so what's sort of the next level? What's the next layer? Where do I need to focus, pay my attention? Because where you pay attention is where you get results. Where do I need to start paying attention? And every single one of them, and they don't necessarily know each other, every one of them said, what do you want?
For one, and it's funny you ask them, they're not qualified to tell you about your life.
That's right.
And no decent coach ever will. That's the thing. I was on a Zoom at the weekend with the guy who founded The Social Chain, Stephen Bartlett. Amazing, really inspiring guy, really interesting story. I'm reading his book at the moment. And so many people came on with that exact question. Like, what should I do? Like, what should I? And I'm like, I was like scratching my head, because I'm like, I would never, I can't ask anyone else what. I can ask what would you do, but I can't ask what should I do, because I'm the only person who's going to live the consequences of the actual action to be taken. And so it is, what do you want is the most powerful and probably most scary question in the world, but it's the one that gives that clarity. I'm seeing Audrey mentioned clarity as well. She talks about clarity of consequences and recognizing benefits. And I think what do you want in the round? What do you want from the day? What do you want in the fullness of your life are the answers to the questions that you're asking.
Well, and here's what I love about that, right? Is I've learned, or at least the way my perspective is shifted, is there's two places you can pursue action from. One is from a place of willpower, and one is from a place of passion. And willpower is something that you push yourself to do, right? I got to do this. I got to, right? Because there's some external force. Passion is, I want to do it, right? You're not pushing yourself. And this is the whole James Clear thing, right? I want to improve myself 1% every day because there's a goal that I want to reach. And if I want to reach that goal, no one is going to stop me from doing it, because that's my measurement of success. Nobody else's. That all has to start with the what I want, right?
I'm going to remix that slightly, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
Only because passion is a really sensitive subject in the world of business, and this whole idea of following your passion, and you want to be a writer, so wait for motivation to come and slap you upside your head and make you write like a speed demon. And actually, I think that it may well work the other way. Well, not the other way around. I totally agree with you. Willpower, we can chuck that in the bin, because quite frankly, it's as unreliable as British weather. I would say passion, though, is we think it's a lead metric, but I actually think it's a lag metric. And it's a lag metric for the thing that actually can get anything done, which is commitment. If you make it, the most powerful force in our lives is our decision. So when I coach women, when I consult on their businesses, we talk about to-do lists, and I spend a lot of time talking about to-do list fibbery, because it's said that the average person has 5.2 days worth of stuff to do on a daily to-do list. So that list is a lie. You're not going to get it all done. But the thing I talk about is also the fact that you cannot rely on feelings. You can't rely on feeling it. You can't rely on passion. You can't rely on motivation or any of those things. What you can rely on is your decision to show up and do the needful. And I know from my own personal experience, and I lean into consistency. I've got 3 kids. I everything I do is kind of snippets here and there. But I know from my own experience that when I make a decision, so instead of having this to-do list, I make them make a must list. And I'm like, on that must list already is breathing. Breathing is on the must list. There's never been a time you decided not to breathe. You know, oh, I'm passionate about breathing. Oh, I'm really motivated to breathe. No, it's on the must list because your brain has set that as a committed, consistent action. But anything that gets on the must list, you know, if your child was sick, if, you know, you've got bills to pay, these are the things on your must list. So the decision and the how you decide to show up honestly will get you much further than your passion. And the only reason why I'm remixing it is because when you realize that you can turn anything into your passion by deciding to do so. So that's where I completely agree with passion, because you can make the most boring, irrelevant, ridiculous things absolutely must do, and you will do them and you will be consistent at them and you'll excel if you decide, once you realize that the power of your decision can do that for you. So that's my tiny little remix.
I actually quite like it. I'm always looking for what is sort of the next level whenever I think of something, what's bigger than that? Because if I understand what's bigger than that, it makes my understanding of that things more elegant. I think you're right. Passion is undirected, right? Commitment is directed passion.
Yeah, and ultimately, all of a sudden, you are directing your will. You are stating your intentions. You're showing up. You know, when you decide, if you decide you're going to run every day for a week, it might rain tomorrow. You made the decision. Are you interested? Which means that you will do what is convenient, or are you committed? Which means that you'll do what's necessary. Yeah. And so I'm a big fan of, and don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that I've got, you know, perfect processes or anything like that. But what I do ask myself that quite often: are you interested or are you committed? Because the stuff I'm interested in doing, when I feel like it, I'll do it. But when I've committed to doing something, and that's why it comes back to that, connecting it to bigger reasons and purposes. But when you're committed, it's non-negotiable.
Love it. Well, gosh, we are 3 minutes from what I had said as a time to talk with you. And gosh, this time has gone really, really fast. I don't think I could actually write and pay attention enough. The mixture that just didn't work out the way I had hoped, because I can't write notes down because I'm learning so much from this, just as much as I'm wanting to participate. And I really thank you, Audrey and Sunny. Thank you so much for chiming in here. I think you really did enrich the conversation. And Yinka, gosh, fabulous conversation. I wish we had another 3 hours. I feel like I could go there, but
I'll just have to come back.
That sounds like a fantastic offer. I'm going to be taking you up on.
No worries.
What? Maybe just to wrap up, I heard a couple of things. I would love sort of any final thoughts. So a couple of blind spots I heard is no need for external validation. Output as a leader is leaders. Choose your heart. Shift from optimism to realism, and systems institutionalize realism. The 1% every day to what you want, and then I think that's most. Or are you interested or committed? Right. Those are that's number 7 there. What did I miss?
No, I don't. You know what it is? I don't think you've missed anything. I think that the desire, you know, when it comes to blind spots, you know, we all have them. You know, I have coaches, not even just one. I have plenty of coaches, because I'm still learning. I'm still on my journey. I'm still wanting to be my best self. And so I just think it's, as we are on this journey and as we recognize blind spots, the one thing I will say, and the thing that has made the difference in order to make those blind spots and the awareness of them actually be able to use them, is this practice of removing judgment. The fact that you didn't know something, ignorance is not, the problem that we have is judgment demands punishment. And so if we see, oh my gosh, I didn't know that, you beat yourself up, you get yourself in a tailspin. As a recovering perfectionist, that would send me on a around the garden for a month. It's all of that is wasted energy. See it, recognize it, go, oh my gosh, what an amazing opportunity. Now I know better, I can do better. And once the book I read, which absolutely re-scrambled my brain on this, was Gabrielle Bernstein's Judgment Detox. But working to remove judgment, I had no idea I was such a judgy McJudge face. It was ridiculous. But the thing is, I would never express it outwardly, but my self-judgment was such a hindrance. And that is probably, this is why it comes back to self-awareness. It's only through being able to remove the judgment, to see it as information rather than as a problem. Negative, and this is one of the reasons why I think, I'm preparing, as I was saying to you earlier, in one of my next masterclasses, and Audrey just mentioned the masterclass as well, which made me laugh. I'm talking about, handling rejection and dealing with bounce back. One of the biggest challenges that we face when things go different or go down or reduce is that sense of shame and guilt. And then we hide instead of doing the things that would actually benefit us from getting out of those spaces. So what I would say is, wherever you find those blind spots, know that every single one of us has them, and have that radical gentleness, practice self-forgiveness, and wherever possible, remove judgment altogether. Use the information and take it as an opportunity. Now I know better, I can do better.
So much more to unpack there. Thank you so much, Yinka. I've truly enjoyed this time with you. Thanks for sharing.
Likewise. Thank you.
Yeah.